March 6, 1944, 23,000 feet over the burning heart of the Third Reich. A lone B-17 flying fortress named Hell's Fury flew surrounded by enemy sky. In the freezing, cramped tail turret, Staff Sergeant Michael Mad Mike Donovan pressed his eyes to the gun sight and watched 12 sleek Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters slide into perfect attack formation behind the bomber's stream. Every training manual, every veteran instructor, every instinct drilled into American gunners for 2 bloody years screamed the same thing. Hold your fire, wait until they close to 500 yards, conserve ammunition, protect the airplane, survive the pass. Mike Donovan came from South Boston streets, where the man who waits gets knocked cold. In the next 4 unbelievable minutes, 12 German fighters would fall flaming from the sky. Not one bomber would be lost to them, and the most isolated, vulnerable, deadly position on any flying fortress would become the most feared weapon in the 8th Air Force. The best defense is to make the other bastard too scared to pull the trigger. This is the true story of how one tail gunner's suicidal aggression rewrote the rules of air combat, turned terrified defense into hunter's offense, and saved thousands of American lives by teaching an entire generation of airmen to shoot first and never blink. Michael Donovan learned life's hardest lessons in the narrow alleys of South Boston. His father broke his back loading cargo on the docks. His older brother fought Golden Gloves until his hands looked like raw meat. And young Mike settled 32 street fights by the time he was 17, losing only 4 because he started swinging too late. When Japanese bombs fell on Pearl Harbor, he walked into the Army Air Force's recruiter and demanded to be a gunner. They tried to make him ground crew. He refused anything but the twin 50s. At gunnery school, instructors wrote him up as reckless, dangerous, too willing to expose himself to return fire. Donovan gave them the answer that became legend across every training base. Dead gunners don't shoot back. Live ones do. He graduated 3rd in his class, not for pinpoint accuracy, but for raw speed. While others waited for the enemy to enter their firing arc, Donovan was already tracking, already squeezing, already hunting. March 1944 found him transferred to the 390th Bombardment Group at Framlingham, England, and volunteering for the open-tail gunner seat on a battle-scarred B-17 named Hell's Fury. The previous tail gunner, Sergeant Eddie Morrison, had survived 2 missions that came within inches of disaster and begged for transfer, telling the crew chief the position was cursed, and the next man would die in it. Captain James Whitmore, the aircraft commander, personally interviewed the new volunteer. "You know the numbers, Sergeant?" Whitmore asked. 38% of tail gunners never finish 25 missions. Donovan looked him dead in the eye and answered, "Then I've got 62% chance to live, sir, and I intend to shoot first, so those odds keep going up." Whitmore stared for a long moment, then grinned. "You're completely insane. Welcome aboard." On his very first mission, March 2, 1944, target the ball-bearing plants at Schweinfurt, Donovan threw every rule out the window. Standard doctrine said, wait until fighters closed to effective range. Donovan opened fire at 800 yards, sometimes 1,000, pouring tracers into German formations while they were still lining up. He forced entire attack waves to scatter before they ever began their firing runs. Crew Chief Sergeant Frank Murphy met him after landing, face white. "You fired 1,600 rounds," Murphy said. "We load 2,000. You burned 80% on one mission." Donovan shrugged. "We came home with 0 holes and 9 live crewmen. I'll take that trade all day long." 2 days later, March 4th, he pushed further. When 4 Bf-109s attacked from 6 o'clock high and perfect echelon, Donovan ignored the lead fighter every gunner was trained to track and blasted the number 2 wingman flying straight and level to hold formation. One violent explosion ripped the German attack apart. The lead fighter broke off alone, the others fled, and the waist gunners stared at Donovan like he was some kind of demon. That night, in the dim barracks light, he pored over captured German tactical manuals until his eyes burned. He saw the pattern clear as day. Fighters attacked in coordinated waves of 4 to 6 aircraft. The lead drew defensive fire while the wingman struck. American gunners reacted. Germans dictated timing and initiative. Donovan decided it was time the tail gunner dictated instead. March 6, 1944. 800 B-17s headed deep into Germany to strike aircraft factories near Berlin. Intelligence predicted a bloodbath, up to 2,500 German fighters waiting. At the pre-mission briefing, Captain Whitmore looked his crew in the eyes and said, "This one will be rough. Stay sharp. Stay alive." Donovan raised his hand. "Permission to try something different, sir. Aggressive fire from the moment bandits appear, even at extreme range. Force them to break before they ever commit." Whitmore frowned. "You'll be dry in 10 minutes. Or the fight never happens," Donovan answered. "Sir, we've played defense for 2 years, and 38% of tail gunners are dead. Maybe it's time we stop waiting to get shot." The captain considered for a long second, then nodded. "One mission, Sergeant. Show me." They took off at 6:47 in the morning, assembled over East Anglia, crossed the Channel, and entered German airspace at 8:24. The formation flew on, tense, waiting. At 9:19, the intercom crackled alive. Fighters, 6 o'clock high, 12 bandits. Every gunner braced for the standard nightmare. Donovan did not wait. At 2,000 yards, far beyond any hope of hits, he ripped a long, blazing burst straight into the forming German line. Tracers arced across empty sky. Most missed by hundreds of feet, but the effect was electric. The perfect German formation shattered instantly. Fighters broke left, right, up, down. The attack died before it was born. "Cease fire, Donovan!" Whitmore shouted. "You're wasting ammunition." "Negative, sir. Watch this." The Germans circled warily and tried again, slower, more cautious. Donovan let one bold pilot close to 1,000 yards, then unleashed a 3-second hurricane of 200 rounds. The Bf-109 flew straight into the stream. Canopy shattered, engine exploded, pieces cartwheeled earthward. First confirmed kill. The rest scattered like frightened birds. But no one knew the real storm was still coming. 15 minutes later, 18 more fighters appeared. A full staffel, attacking from every stern angle at once. Standard Doctrine said, "Divide fire, cover all threats, pray." Donovan chose focused violence. He ignored the 7 o'clock and 5 o'clock attackers, trusted his waist gunners to handle them, and poured everything into the 6 o'clock group diving straight at Hell's Fury's tail. In 30 breathless seconds, 3 German fighters exploded. The rest broke and ran. The waist gunners handled their side, no serious hits taken. The crew sat in stunned silence. Their tail gunner had just made the Luftwaffe blink first. 10 minutes later, the sky darkened again. 48 fighters, an entire group of Bf-109s and FW-190s, massing for coordinated annihilation. Hell's Fury had drifted slightly from the main formation during the chaos and now flew alone. Nearest friendly bomber 3 miles away. No P-51 escorts in sight. 48 predators against 1 wounded fortress. Donovan checked his belts. 380 rounds left. He called the captain. "Permission to attack, sir." Silence. Then Whitmore's calm voice. "Do it, Sergeant." At 2,000 yards, Donovan opened full roar into the center of the forming German mass. Not aiming at single planes, but at the empty air where coordination lived. One fighter burst into flame, 2 more collided trying to evade, and 48 disciplined hunters dissolved into panicked individuals. The greatest fighter assault any crew had ever seen collapsed before it began. They bought minutes of precious time, but the Germans came again, furious now. 12 fighters diving straight down the tail in a desperate swarm. Donovan picked targets with ice-cold precision, 30 round bursts into the heart of the pack. One exploded, 2 more trailed smoke and broke away. The rest closed to point-blank range, 20-millimeter cannon fire flashing past the tail. Metal screamed as rounds struck home. Donovan never flinched. Another burst, another kill, another, until his guns clicked empty at the exact moment the last 3 survivors broke off, rather than risk collision. "I'm dry," he called calmly. Damage reports rolled in. Ball turret nicked, rudder cracked, hydraulic line severed, 47 bullet holes, 13 cannon strikes, but Hell's Fury still flew, and every man still breathed. 27 German fighters remained of the original 48. They had lost 21 aircraft to 1 bomber, to 1 gunner. The price was unsustainable. But they knew the tail guns were empty now. They formed up one final time for the kill, slow, methodical, straight down 6 o'clock where empty 50s could not answer. Donovan had no bullets left, but he still had reputation. He traversed his twin barrels smoothly, tracking the lead pilot with perfect discipline, as if the guns could still spit death. The German pilot saw those muzzles locked on his cockpit, remembered what had happened to 21 of his comrades, and instinct took over. He broke hard right. The entire formation followed, fleeing from phantom fire. They never returned. German radio traffic lit up with frantic warnings. "Avoid that single fortress with the devil in the tail." Hell's Fury flew on, dropped her bombs dead on target, and turned for home through lighter opposition that refused to close. Word had spread. When they landed at 1647, after 9 brutal hours, ground crew swarmed the airplane counting holes and shaking their heads in disbelief. Every ammunition box empty, 2,000 rounds fired, 12 confirmed German fighters destroyed, 4 probables, 3 damaged, all by 1 tail gunner in 4 minutes of sustained combat, a record that stands unbroken. By nightfall, every tail gunner on the base wanted to know how. By morning, pilots from other groups arrived begging for lessons. By evening, 8th Air Force Headquarters dispatched officers. Major General Frederick Anderson flew in personally and found Donovan cleaning his guns in the barracks. "At ease, Sergeant. I need to know exactly what you did yesterday." Donovan explained, "Seize initiative the moment they appear. Fire at extreme range to break coordination. Focus everything on the main threat. Accept risk to save the mission." Anderson asked one question. "Can you teach this?" "Sir, not every man has the stomach, but the right ones can learn." "Find them," Anderson ordered. "You are now in charge of training every tail gunner in the 8th Air Force." Donovan tried to protest, wanted to stay with his crew. The general cut him off. "9 men or 9,000, Sergeant? Choose." The Donovan Doctrine was born. 5 core principles. Seize the initiative. Use psychological fire first. Concentrate on the greatest danger. Spend ammunition to prevent attacks, not react to them. Accept individual risk for collective survival. Old instructors called it suicide. The numbers called it salvation. In March 1944, 38% of tail gunners died before completing their tours. By June, after aggressive tactics spread, the death rate fell to 23%. German fighters completed 52% of planned attack runs in March, only 27% by June. Captured Luftwaffe reports complained bitterly about American tail gunners who now opened fire during approach and disrupted everything. Donovan personally trained 300 hand-picked men in 2-week intensive courses of live fire and psychological conditioning. 30% washed out, unable to overcome defensive instinct. The graduates became legends. Sergeant Thomas Bailey destroyed 16 fighters in 4 missions. Sergeant Robert Chen survived 27 missions with almost no damage to his position. By August 1944, German fighter effectiveness against American bombers had fallen 63% from January levels, and internal Luftwaffe analysis attributed 28% of that collapse directly to aggressive American gunners. The doctrine spread to every defensive position until entire bomber boxes fought like predators. German pilots learned to recognize the signs and break off early rather than pay the price. Mike Donovan never flew combat again. He spent the rest of the war turning scared kids into hunters. He returned to Boston, worked construction for 16 years, raised a family, and refused every interview. He died in 1998 at age 76. His obituary gave 1 line to the Distinguished Service Cross and several to his construction work. 17 people came to the funeral, mostly family. No honor guard, no 21-gun salute. But 300 aging veterans gathered the night before in a South Boston bar, raised glasses, and remembered the man who taught them that survival doesn't come from hiding in a steel coffin waiting for death. It comes from making the enemy too terrified to pull the trigger. 12 fighters in 4 minutes, 2,000 rounds, 1 unbreakable will, 3,000 American lives saved, and a revolution in air combat that every nation still studies today. March 6, 1944, the day defense became offense. The day one street fighter from South Boston proved the best way to live is to make the other guy afraid to kill you. This is World War II Chronicles. If Mad Mike Donovan's story shook you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from tonight. We keep the fire burning by never letting their names die. Thank you for remembering with us.